Hey guys, Andrew from Havelock, Jamie from Catapult. We're back with round 2 of our vignettes on trying to give you some insightful information as a couple of folks who are in the van conversation, us obviously on the installation side, but Jamie as an upfitter. We're here in Reno, Nevada at the Havelock facility, and Jamie takes this part of the building to do his thing with Catapult. I would note we are 6 feet apart, which is why we're not wearing masks. And in this rendition, we want to talk about accessories, and we're going to focus specifically on the exterior. There's an awful lot of options that one can add to their van. We've got a 2016 Sprinter 144. We've got a pretty healthy dose of Luminous gear on it. And I've been through various upgrades and changes thanks to Jamie. And I'm happy to kind of talk about what our experience has been. But I think first and foremost, Jamie, maybe you can help us understand, what some key questions are around accessories that you get from people. What are maybe some, considerations that shouldn't be overlooked. And then of course, vanity is going to come in with light configurations, and people can really go crazy, and cost can really accelerate. So I think it'd be useful to hear, what are the questions people are asking, and then what are some key recommendations from your perspective?
Yeah, sure. I think first and foremost, we see a lot of vans come in with either aftermarket suspension, lifts, bigger wheels, tires. I love those accessories. Those are mandatory for me. I ride bikes. I'm a big fan of suspension and good suspension. Whether it be a bike, motorcycle, snowmobile, truck, van, it's all the same. You're going to notice suspension. So that's a mandatory accessory and upgrade for me is tuned valve suspension. We use Van Compass for the Transit as well as the Sprinter. Those guys have been in the suspension game for a long time. They know what they're doing. But a very important consideration when you're upsizing wheels and tires is where do you put your spare?
Right.
So you'd be surprised how many people come in with aftermarket wheels and tires with a factory spare.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't work. If you're going to use this van to get out there, you need a spare tire, right? You need the same size spare tire.
Yeah.
So that kind of kicks off a list of, okay, where do I put my spare? Well, where do you put your ladder? Do you want a spare and a ladder combo? So there's all this stuff to think about when you're thinking about accessories. So start from the ground up. Do I want a lift? Do I want tires and suspension?
Right.
If it's a yes, figure out where you're going to put your spare. Ideally, if it's not oversized that much, keep it in the same spot. You don't need to carry all this stuff on the outside of your van. Keep the spare tucked where it's designed to go from the factory.
Totally.
Transit, that's hard to do. An aftermarket or an oversized spare will not fit there. So you've got to entertain the swing out.
Yeah. Makes
Ladder.
the decision a little easier.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is what we have to do.
Right.
So Sprinter, there's a few more options. You can we put your spare in the factory location.
Right.
And it's a nice sized tire. It's oversized. It's a 17-inch wheel. But we were able to get it back in the cage, in the factory cage, which is great.
Yeah.
So for me, I put a true 33 on my demo van, so I'm putting it on the back on my Owl Van's ladder and tire carrier. Yeah. And that kind of drives my start of the accessory list is the suspension, ladder, and tire carrier.
Yeah. And then something to really think about as part of all this is how are you going to use the ladder?
Mm-hmm.
Because I've got a box on the top of my rig that has skis in it pretty much all year.
Yep.
And the Owl stuff that you've got going is sweet. But boy, I wouldn't want to be climbing up that thing with ski boots on.
Totally.
Now, frankly, I don't love climbing up mine with ski boots on either. So I try to change them. But it is a consideration. The other thing is owls go on the back. Illumines can go on the side. That's a much better access point for a box, so you don't have to go all the way up.
Absolutely.
So I think that you're right to say that, it's not just, oh, that one looks cool, and there's a whole package that goes with it. You've got to stop and think about usage as well.
100%. Yeah, you definitely want to figure out how you're going to access your van. You've got the box skis, come at it from the side. Illumines also does make a rear ladder, just like the Owl. I wanted to keep that slim OEM profile on the sides of my vans and just have it on the back. And I still have access to the roof and the rack, but I don't need the box access. So think about your usage. What are you going to be doing with the ladder? Do you even need to get on the roof? That's a big one too. If you don't, do you really need a roof rack? I do. I love being on the roof. I pull up to a camp spot and the roof is a deck. It extends your living space. So I like to put a chair up there and hang out on the roof of my van.
Yeah, I think that's a big consideration. And then, of course, you get into slats or perforated decks up there. Let's talk about lights for a second.
Good one.
Because there's a lot of options. You can get above doors, side and back. Obviously, you can get into some pretty serious lighting so you can see where you're going and have some fun like we just did with my rig. It literally feels like it's stadium lighting. Thanks to you, and that's great fun, obviously. So, what are some questions? What are some key considerations there?
I would say if you're a DIYer or even if you're taking your van somewhere to get upfitted, pre-wire for whatever light you could imagine, right? Say, maybe I want these lights up front. Have your guy, or wire's fairly cheap in the grand scheme of the outfit. Pre-wire for everything. The standard lighting that we do is just a smaller LED at the sliding passenger door and smaller LED at the back doors. So when you're in or around your van, you should never feel like you need a headlamp. Everything should be well lit. Totally. So you open the sliding door, you've got a light switch right there. You're lighting up the area outside. You can see when you pull into a camp spot at night, you can see all your gear. So that addresses just lights at the doors, not necessarily driving or fog lights. The factory lamps on both of these, Sprinter and Transit, they're not great. A lot of people do an LED upgrade to the headlights. So for that reason, that's why you put in aftermarket fog and spotlights. When you're pulling into a dirt road, your peripheral is not much with factory headlights. So adding those big fog lights, whether it be on a light bar at the bumper height or up on your rack, makes a huge difference. Just finding camp, So I think that's a great upgrade. And I also have running lights, 3 small LEDs on the fairing of my rack, and those are just so that really about aesthetic, but it does help me and people to see that this is a tall vehicle, so that's an upgrade that I like, is just the very mini running lights.
So as we wind up, I'm going to say that a key accessory that took me a while to arrive at, and I'm going to ask you for the one that you would choose too. For me, it's a run-in board. Whether it's retractable or not, I thought I could live without it. Now that I have one, I can't believe I spent any time without it. Is there something like that you would throw on the list as a must-have that might otherwise get overlooked?
That's a must-have. I am going to go with suspension first, and probably roof rack second. So roof rack is my second must-have. I'm not going to load up my roof rack with a bunch of stuff, but I am going to have solar panels on it. I am going to have a place to hang out, a roof deck. So that's a really important one for me.
Cool. Well, guys, we're going to keep these things coming. We really hope that they're useful. We are wide open to suggestions for additional topics. The list that we're going to run through are the things that we hear the most, but we have some pretty wild commentary too that we may or may not address here. So feel free to shoot us some notes and let us know how we can try to give you some of our thoughts.